All right, thank you for interviewing with Ferguson Township. Nick Fugaro, Township Communications Coordinator, myself, Centrice Martin, Assistant Township Manager. As you know, next week is EMS week, Emergency Medical Services, and the Ferguson Township Board of Supervisors approved a proclamation to honor the all of those working in this profession in emergency medical services. So Nick and I are out interviewing and trying to hear from those that have provided exceptional leadership roles and boots on the ground to help demonstrate to our community the services that are provided as part of emergency medical services, help raise awareness among residents who maybe have not as much knowledge on what services are provided here in the Center region. And we thought of you, someone who's provided a great deal of time, energy, and expertise to the Center region area. So thank you for taking. So let's start off by you sharing your name, role, and if you would mind, tell us a little bit about Alpha Fire Company, please.
Sure. Well, thanks for your interest, first of all. So I'm Steve Bair. I'm the Fire Director for the Center Region Council of Governments and Chief of Department for the Regional Fire Protection Program. And the Regional Fire Protection Program is comprised of the Alpha Fire Company, of course. And then there's we have a 6-person fire marshal's office that handles fire investigations for origin and cause. We have the Center Region Emergency Management Program as part of Regional Fire Protection. And then the last piece is Center Region Hazmat. So the Hazmat team is part of Center Region Fire. So we cover 104 square miles. 4.5 municipalities within the Center region. About 93,000 people is the full-time protected population. And we run somewhere between 1,100 and 1,300 calls a year typically. In terms of specific EMS components, if you think about all the things fire department does, of course obviously we handle fires of all types, but we also do a lot with partner agencies for law enforcement and EMS most particularly. And on the EMS side, we handle all the technical rescues, which is everything from taking people out of elevators, shafts, pits, high places, carrying out of the woods, cutting you out of a car or any other vehicle for that matter. So, in EMS, we're like kind of a force multiplier. So we're the technical arm, and then we're a force multiplier for EMS. So if EMS has something that's really large, we have EMTs and medically, first of all, firefighters are medically trained in basics, but then we also have EMTs in the fire department, which then are available to supplement the like in our area, which would be Center Lifelink, Port Matilda EMS, and University EMS primarily.
That's a lot. Could you name the 4 municipalities in the Center region that are
so
serviced?
Regional Fire Protection handles the Borough State College, for townships of Ferguson, Patton College, and then we cover the southern end of Benner Township, what's Benner Independent. So the piece of Benner Township south of the institutional land where those residents are part of the State College Area School District, that's part of our primary jurisdiction. Beyond that, we do automatic mutual aid and Half Moon, which relies primarily on the Port Matilda Fire Company, and we run automatic mutual aid in Harris Township, which is primarily covered by the Boalsburg Fire Company.
Thank you. That's a lot of ground to cover for sure.
Yeah.
How many years has Alpha Fire Company been established?
Alpha Fire Company dates to 1899. It's interesting. So of course the university predates the town and the fire department. And the university actually had its own fire department until 1923, when they figured out that it's a pain managing a fire department, I guess, for lack of a better way to put it, right? And the town, and at that time the town and the university agreed that they should have a single fire department. So from 1923 onward, it was the Alpha Fire Company. That was it. That was the only thing that was here.
All right. So can you help me understand? Are you the fire chief and the director?
Yes.
Okay. And are there 2 separate duties and responsibilities with those 2 different roles?
Not really. They're really one and the same. So the reason our titles get kind of messy is you have to look at the way we legally exist. So I'm the government. Okay, let's start there. The Alpha Fire Company is like any other volunteer fire company in Pennsylvania. It is a 501c3 corporation, and it essentially is contracted by the municipalities for service. So I have statutory authority over the fire company, but the fire company, is a business. It's a contractor in a legal sense. We also have State College Firemen's Relief, which is a big part of the enterprise. State College Firemen's Relief is a 501c4 corporation, and they exist solely to administer certain state taxes back to the program, back to the fire company in the program. So you have three legal entities that all really work together so seamlessly. Like I said, we kind of mush everything together, which gets a little messy, but it just helps people understand the hierarchy. But legally, we have three entities kind of mushed together here, all working to common goal, which is really, really good.
Yeah.
We're very fortunate here.
We are here in the Center region. Can you talk a little bit about how the pandemic, COVID-19, impacted calls for service?
Oh yeah, COVID-19 has not been kind to emergency services in a number of ways. So, so for us, for 8 months, you can't train. I mean, the state fire academy has been closed for a year almost now. I mean, it's just been a real management challenge. We cannot work from home. There is no working from home here, and
you're an essential service.
And some of the guidance is interesting. So now that vaccines are out and widely available, but we went through a period where if you call the fire department and say, I smell something burning, I have to walk in your house, take a mask off, and sniff the air. I mean, there's no other way to do that job. And then I got to keep sniffing until I find out what it is and where it is, right? And so that's a weekly event for us. Somebody in this fire department has to be doing that. So it's been tough on that front. But the ongoing impact is interesting. So we have had our worst recruiting year ever, which is not good for a volunteer fire department. You got to be bringing people in every year because you have people aging out every year. So we used to be floating around 100 people. We're floating around 90 people now. We have members who are still, reasonably active, but we had a pretty rigorous training opportunities and stuff to keep people engaged. And now, with an 8 month plus moratorium on a lot of this training, people found some other things to do with their time, and it remains to be seen whether we'll get all that time back. So we're not sure where that's heading. So there's just a lot of uncertainty right now. I think the other issue is, when you think about society in general and you think about people, volunteerism in our world, EMS and fire is already plummeting. It's been a problem for decades now, and it's just getting worse. And, if you go back to, 9/11, there was a swell of some patriotism. People took a renewed interest in emergency services there. COVID's not going to give you that bump. COVID's a whole different animal. So, fire and EMS people are constantly reminded, in fact, formally trained to understand that, look, you're going to encounter people who are, bleeding and physically ill, and, there's a lot of opportunity to be infected and to be exposed to things you don't want to be exposed to, and I think most people don't get too concerned about that, because unless they know someone who's had that problem or they've had that problem, it's kind of, how it is, right? You know about it, but it's not real. You know what I'm saying? It hasn't affected you directly. COVID has affected everyone very, very directly, one way or another. I mean, you've either have sick, someone who's got sick, someone who's passed away. At the very least, you've been massively inconvenienced with the restrictions on society. And so I think that just puts all that risk in a very different light for people, and we're kind of waiting to see what happens in the fall. If fall recruiting is lackluster, then we're going to be worried. then we're going to be worried.
Right, because Penn State, I imagine, brings a lot of students into town, and I imagine that also it creates a network of volunteers.
Oh, absolutely. In any given year, we have roughly a third of the fire company is Penn State students, roughly. So that's so Penn State's been in disarray like everyone else. So we have certainly fewer students this year.
Right.
But yeah, you're right. You're spot on. It's just been a big ripple. It's been a mess.
One thing's for sure, I've seen a lot of resilience here in the State College community in the Center region. We've seen a lot of adaptable behaviors and a lot of hard decisions to make and some creative thinking on how to keep moving business as usual forward.
Right.
But certainly the line of work that you're in and your staff and your team here at Alpha Fire Company, the increased risk of exposure has been far greater than some of us. And so thank you for your services. It's my pleasure to be interviewing you here with hopes that we can increase awareness among some of the broader community members that have a general idea of what Alpha Fire Company does. Putting out fires is, I think, generally a unanimous understanding, but there's so much more, right? Can you talk a little bit more? Well,
sure.
You talked about some of the services.
We talked about some of the EMS-centric stuff, but we also do things so for example, we supplement state municipal police with regard to all types of traffic control. I mentioned we have a fire marshal's office. We are the lead for fire investigation with both the municipal and state police. And then if we find things of concern, then if they're not already involved, we involve the appropriate either municipal or state detectives involved in those kind of things. We work with the bomb squad quite a bit, actually, as part of our hazmat mission, and we are the hazmat team. So we had been managing Penn State hazmat since 2013 very actively. In 2020, Penn State, like they did with the fire department in 1923, said, this just really isn't. We're not the best place to be running this thing. And so we took that over in lock, stock, and barrel in June of 2020. We also do some, kind of odd, interesting things that we don't, so we train for active shooter and rescue task force, which is actually making entry in with the tactical medical people and the tactical team. So we don't force anyone to do that, obviously. It's a lot of big event planning and stuff that people really would never see behind the scene, which is good, right? You want to come and enjoy the event. You want to wonder if you're safe, right? There's literally hundreds and thousands of hours of training and planning and stuff for these big events. And, we're doing stuff for law enforcement, like, monitoring air and, carrying the equipment and training to, if people are chaining themselves to things, for example, that's the fire department's handling those kind of things, So there's just a whole litany of stuff. In technical rescue, we could spend 20 minutes just listing out all the specific elements of technical rescue, and for example, so there's just a lot of stuff there. We also then do, services that nobody really thinks about. There's a lot of administrative services. So, for example, everything that gets built around here passes through the fire department for a review. Site review, access, water supply, all those kind of things. We do, we have a large public information activity, which, in the COVID era, of course, is kind of, sitting on ice right now, obviously, until restrictions ease and public gatherings come back to the fore. But in any given year, we're reaching out to over, somewhere between 5,000 to 6,000 people very directly with public education programs and such. So there's a lot of moving parts here.
There are.
It's a very complex business, and it's a lot of moving parts, which is one of the things that makes it really interesting. But But I think the main thing to take out of that is there's no one person that can do all that. So, as much as I get to be the titular head of this thing, right, it takes a lot of people to make this thing work. And we're really fortunate to have a lot of really good people here.
So I'm curious, were you a volunteer firefighter prior to taking this administrative role?
I was.
Or what did it look like for you when you started on this journey?
Well, I grew up in Linglestown, Pennsylvania, Lower Paxton Township, so just east of Harrisburg. And in 1972, we got whacked by the flood pretty hard, and I spent a lot of time. I spent weeks, I think it was 14 or whatever, so spent weeks on a Red Cross sponsored team shoveling mud out of people's houses and stuff. I just went on for weeks. But I got to know some people, and kind of had the interest. And my parents always, we lived in small town Pennsylvania, right? So it was kind of like hey, everybody kind of pitches into the community in some way. You should try to figure out how where you fit. So when I turned 16, I was old enough to start taking medical training, and I took what was then EMT did not exist in Pennsylvania, so I took what was called advanced first aid, which was as high as you could go, until EMT came to the fore. And that training happened to be in a fire station in a neighboring township, and so I kind of figured out that as that this medical stuff was interesting, but this fire stuff seemed really interesting. And I got to, a couple of times, class would be interrupted, they'd go out and stuff. And so at 17, I got to join a fire department in Lower Paxton Township, Colonial Park. And, I've been doing it ever since. So I'm in my 46th year. When I retire, I'll have had 47 years, a little over 47 years of time. It's been great. It's definitely defined kind of who I am and what I am to a great degree, probably more than my industrial career, which is why I'm doing this now for a living instead of my industrial job, right? But yeah, it's been something I've done for a long time, and I've met some really great people in the process and made some lifelong friends, and it's just been a good thing for me.
Wow. And so you say your industrial career, forgive me, I'm not sure where that.
Yeah, I'm a mechanical engineer by education, and I spent I took this job. I started here in 2007, February 2007, so I worked in industry until December of 2006, and I was in engineering management. At the time, I was working for Teradyne in Boston, headquartered in Boston, and living in southern New Hampshire. Being a volunteer with the town of Amherst, New Hampshire, I was the deputy chief in Amherst.
Incredible.
So, yeah, so I've always had this dual track. I was a chief I've been a chief officer since 1984, 4, somewhere thereabouts. I became assistant chief in Colonial Park. I was 25. I'm not sure that was a good idea, frankly. I don't know how that looked like a good plan for anybody, including me, but somehow I ended up there and kind of, had to learn a lot of stuff pretty quick and never looked back. So
at 25?
At 25. Wait, I was too young.
But so you had your 8 to 5 in mechanical engineering work,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And then it sounds like on the side, ever since you've been a young boy, you've been in this line of work.
Pretty much.
On the side.
Yeah.
Outside of your 8 to 5.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is true of most volunteers. I mean, everybody here who volunteers has a job. I mean, they get something that's paying the bills and that's
Absolutely.
It's a lifestyle. I mean, really, I would tell you it's a lifestyle. I think, if you're in a suburban department or urban area, it's definitely a lifestyle. If you're, even in a rural area, it takes a lot to run a fire, keep a fire department going. But you're running less than 200 calls a year, then it's a lot more manageable. So.
Imagine.
Yeah.
I can only imagine.
I've always been in busy fire departments, so it's been pretty much second job.
I did not know that about this, Steve.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing.
Well, the neat thing about my industrial job is I was fortunate enough to be in a very senior position, which allowed me to manage my schedule very flexibly. Served me well.
Right, yeah. Sometimes you'll find yourself working at 11 o'clock on a report for the 8 to 5 and back
Yeah,
at it.
So especially at Teradyne, I had engineers all over the world. So I didn't feel bad about doing something for the fire department at 2 o'clock in the afternoon because I knew at 9 o'clock at night I'm talking to somebody in Malaysia or China for, you know what I mean?
Right.
So, that's, and I worked for, and I was fortunate, I always worked for employers whose view was, look, as long as you're doing what we need you to do, you manage yourself, you figure out where it all fits.
Right. And part of managing yourself was increasing human capital for the community of which
Yeah,
you all
absolutely.
were living.
Yeah.
So
Well, and the
there's an
reality,
asset.
sure, and the reality is, now not so much Teradyne being headquartered in Boston, but my original employer was AMP Incorporated in Harrisburg, which was now part Tyco, was bought out by Tyco Electronics in the 90s, but in AMP, all the plants, everybody was protected by a volunteer fire department, so it was kind of like, they had a pretty good sense of community there, so I've been very fortunate to have that environment to work through all this.
Yeah, absolutely. Could you talk a little bit about or share some of the challenges that you found working in this line of work?
Yeah, so the first thing, people, there are two major components that drive people to do this, in my opinion. This is Steve Bair's opinion. I don't know where you'd find any research on this or not, right? But in my opinion, there's genuine altruism. There's some degree of genuine altruism. People say, look, I want to do something meaningful and I want to help other people. And I mean, you have to have that to survive this job. So it's there. And then, there's certainly a certain amount of excitement. It's an interesting endeavor. And, for 20, 30 minutes, it's you against the fire kind of thing,
Yeah.
It's hard work. It's physically hard labor, in spurts, but it's very, very hard labor nonetheless. So, which is another reason why at 60 something it's maybe time to move on. But that's what, so there's kind of two components there that work together, I think, to keep people driven. The problem with that is you become, people are passionate about it, which is great. On the other hand, they're passionate about it and they take a lot of things to heart. So. PTSD in fire and EMS is a real serious problem. In the last couple of years, collectively, the fire service and EMS has lost more people to suicide than they have in being killed in the job, being seriously injured or killed in the job. I mean, that's a serious problem. And what starts to happen is people, so I've been to quite a few fatal fires, where I had a role in the outcome of the fire. And you always, and I think there's always to some degree people, say, well, could I have been faster? Could I have been better? Could I have been, and you have got to very quickly understand that, look, you didn't create the problem. The best you can do for anybody is to show up, know your job, show up, do your job as well as you can, and give them the best possible fighting chance. And the reality is that it's not going to come out well a lot of times, Not everybody survives the car crash. Not everybody survives the fire. Not everybody survives the fall from the 40-foot cliff or whatever it is. And you've just got to keep that in perspective. So that's a real serious issue that we have with people who, on TV, right? Everything works out great, and it's all done in an hour. Everything's decided wonderful. Everybody's happy, and and even the drama shows where they're supposed to be, where they try to build in some angst and some drama and stuff. It's just never, it's entertainment. Let's face it. Nobody wants to come look at training films, on television or the movies. But unfortunately, that's what starts to kind of shape people's expectations and opinions. And of course, you pretty quickly when you get here, you realize that that's not how it works. Life's not that fair. So I think that's a real challenge. The second big challenge is it can be addictive. It's a really interesting stuff. It's interesting work. It's fun to train. So you have to be very good at balancing time in life, especially, volunteer, that's a challenge. I mean, volunteer, think about it. A volunteer has a job, some people work more than one job, to make ends meet. You've got family obligations, of course, your financial obligations. You can't ignore your social obligations. You have got to be more than just, this little box, because what happens to a lot of people, and I've watched this happen, and I tell everybody around here, especially younger folk, look, pay attention, this can't be all that there is in life, because at some point you're going to age out of this thing, and then what? If you age out, you suddenly have like no social contacts, no friends. You don't have, you cannot have that happen. You just can't let that. So the balance of life becomes really, really important. And I think that balance of life also drives some of those PTSD stressors, that we're seeing cropping up in some folks. So
that's a way that you try to manage or help deliver through your leadership role. Not necessarily a solution, but a way to cope and manage life is just reminding everyone that
and we
have
work,
to do something outside of this.
It's a lot worse in EMS. EMS is just much more often, police officers and EMS people, more so than us as firefighters, are much more exposed to bad outcomes very directly. I put you in the back of an ambulance. I have no idea what the end of the movie looked like. My movie ended the minute the doors closed. We have no idea, right? The person in the back of the ambulance who's with you when you pass away, unfortunately, is they live that from start to finish. That's a different scenario.
I just thought of something I wanted to ask. Do you provide here through Alpha Fire Company the Write-along? Is there a Write-along share to help give a little bit of a preview to this work? Prior to COVID, of course. Right now we don't do anything, unfortunately, until the restrictions are eased. Hopefully maybe the end of this month we'll get back to being able to at least have people stop by and say hello and look around here. It's hard to do that. So the only time we do that, we used to do it more as a public goodwill thing, but we only do it now if it's part of a training or bona fide educational endeavor. So if you were studying or doing research, or you were in a high school program, for example, where you're supposed to explore the profession or something, okay. That's fine, or if it's a experience sharing kind of thing for because you're in another fire department and you're coming to someplace bigger, busier, or whatever, that kind of thing. And the reason for that is there's only 6 seats in the fire truck. Every one of those 6 seats has a job. So the minute you put a ride-along in there, somebody's not there to do that job. And it really changes. It really changes the efficiency and nature of the response. So it's harder to manage than you might ever think to do that. It's really difficult to do that. That makes sense.
Yeah.
So I want to be mindful of time.
Yes.
I do want to ask one last question. What are the rewarding aspects of the fire protection services work that?
Well, I think everybody deep down inside wants some purpose in life, and they want to know that they're successful at whatever that purpose is. So the neatest thing about, I always compare and contrast because I get asked this question a lot. So I compare and contrast with somebody who coaches. Okay, if you're the coach, let's say you're the youth baseball coach, or the youth soccer coach, or the youth football coach, or whatever it is, right? You're coaching young people, right? You don't know. I mean, you believe you've made a good positive impact in that person, but until they become older and either excel in the sport or become a really good person in society, whatever it is, your contribution here takes a long time to be realized, to really be able to say, hey, I made a difference in Nick's life. I feel really good about that, right? We're instantly gratified. I mean, literally. I mean, the minute you show up at the end of somebody's driveway when they call 911, you're a good person.
Yeah.
Okay, they're happy to see you, right? You got to work hard to foul that up.
Right.
It can be done, but you got to work hard at it. And then, you do the job, right? You walk away from that clearly knowing that you have made some kind of something is different. And so you are instantly gratified. There are very few opportunities in life like that. When you stop and think about what we all do in life, there's very few things that are that instantly gratifying. And whether you know what difference you've made to somebody.
It's meaningful.
So even though I don't always get to see the end of the movie, I know what condition somebody was in when those ambulance doors closed, and I know they're not trapped in the wreckage of the car that they're on their way to get medical care. I have done exactly what I'm supposed to do, right? I know the fire went out. I can look and see how much damage could have been done compared to what was done. I know exactly what our contribution was, right? That's pretty powerful. And frankly, I think that's what, for me has kept me going all this time was frankly, I think I crave that. I think that's something that's important to me. And I enjoy that a lot. And I will miss that aspect of it, by the way. That will be probably the single biggest thing I think deep down inside that I end up missing when I retire.
Yes, how will you keep yourself stimulated and...
I'm working on that.
Okay, yeah, I was just thinking after hearing about your career.
Yeah, so you have the dual career thing going, and then you decide on the second period you're going to do the single career thing, and now I got the third period, and it's like, what are we going to fill that time with? So I have some ideas. So But yeah, it's something I've been starting to think about in earnest. I still have this job to do. I can't think a lot, you know what I mean? I'm still in this job, got to get this job done well. But yeah, it's on my mind without question.
And it is. Thank you so much, Steve.
Thanks for asking.
Your words have been powerful and full of wisdom. Thank you for giving insight to not just what goes on here with Alpha Fire Company, but your career and how you've arrived where you're at. And I certainly, personally, will be quite interested to see you in 5 years.
Thanks. I would just put if I can put one shameless last minute pitch out there, I would encourage anybody who's ever had any kind of inkling if the things that I'm talking about are the kind of things that are interested to you, right? Please come see what we're about. Give it a try. Encourage others to do it.